What if I told you that there was once a drum so sacred that it could emit loud and powerful sounds which could be heard and felt along the Tana River? I am Joana, and here we uncover Africa's untold. In fact, this drum had the power to immediately grab the attention of Pokomo community members and gather them together for spiritual and traditional ceremonies. Pokomo, I don't know if I pronounced it very well. It is on the screen. This is a story about what happens when something sacred is turned into an exhibit and how people fight to reclaim not just an object, but their sense of self. Today, I'll tell you about the sacred drum and how sometimes we Africans can be the problem too when fighting for the return of our artifacts. The Pokomo once lived in a harmonious space with the rhythm of the Ngadi, the drum. I don't know if I pronounced it well. Whenever it sounded, the riverbanks filled with life. The Kijo, divine guardian of the drum, ruled with moral and spiritual authority. The Ngadi was their constitution, their courtroom, their crown. Not just that, the Ngadi drum was about 9 feet tall, taller than an average human being. So how did they play the drum? But colonialism came in the early 1900s. In 1902, the British colonial occupation of Kenya. During that time, Ngadji was confiscated. Then there was Anderson, the colonial officer, who would go down in the Pokomo history as a man who broke a covenant between the people and the gods. I'll tell you much more about this guy later. And there's something that might make you question the Pokomo people. In 2013, Umkijo Biaba Diha Mijo, hard name, elder brother to the soon-to-be enthroned king of the Pokomo community living in Liverpool, UK, confirmed that Ngadi was at the British Museum. He had seen it with his 2 eyes. This was not the first confirmation of Ngadi's location in the British Museum, as demand for his return has been active since his theft in 1902. But for the first time in 100 years, the Pokomo had laid eyes on that their sacred drum. It was said that he placed his father's bakora, that's like a walking stick, on it to reconnect Ngadi to his forefathers and ask for reconciliation and reprieve from anguish which the Pokomo people suffered when Ngadi was captured. But how do you reclaim what was stolen and locked up in a museum far away? It's not even on display. In fact, you can go and check their online. You don't have a single picture of it on their page, but it is acknowledged, it's registered, locked in there. So why is Ngadi in a closet then in London? Actually, the author of a book, Lutz Barnaby Phillips, documents in his book that there are even more artifacts locked up in the closets and dungeons of European museums as those that are displayed. Some elders urged patience and diplomacy. Let's talk about it so we get it back. Others saw no point and said, I beg, we want it by force. The British Museum's records said Ngadi was acquired. Acquired is not stolen. This is a word that really, it sometimes irritates me. Acquired. We're going to debunk that later. The people wondered, would bringing Ngadi back home bring what was lost? Or had time already changed it beyond recognition? So even some thought it was already destroyed. After the news of Ngadi's drum existence reached the Pokomo people, they decided to act. A formal restitution campaign began. The king gives his brother, Dr. Haye Baiba Omjiho, permission to lead the charge from the UK. Letters are written. Meetings are held. You know all these diplomatic things. And the mission is clear. Bring Ngadi home. But did you know that the British Museum stated they cannot return Ngadi because of the British Museum Act of 1963, which prevents the museum from returning objects that were made before 1850 that do not have duplicate and are still in suitable condition of the collection. So wait, I don't understand. So they're like, oh my God, we can return it, but this paper that we have, this document says we can't. And unfortunately, the Ngadi drum fell under this category. Wait, when people say that African leaders are corrupt and Europeans are not, look at how things are functioning. Look, Europeans have professionalized the system of corruption and theft. That their own is on another level, another grade. There is a legal document that will back up, cover up atrocities and make it legitimate. Well, that does not still excuse African leaders, and I'm not encouraging you now to go and increase your low-grade corruption to high-level corruption. In that time, if someone outside the Kijo spoke up or even accidentally came across the Ngadi drum, it was punishable by death. Now, let's explore how this drum left in the first place. So when the drum was even transported, villagers were notified beforehand and everyone has the same doors. When Anderson, this British officer, arrived, he was expected to abide by the same rules, but you know them. When he learned about this mysterious drum, the drum forbidden to outsiders, the drum that nobody should see when it's out, he was like, I want to see it. But the Kijo, they refused. So Anderson returned back with a gun. Is this civilized curiosity or barbaric arrogance? Let me know what you think. Drop your comments beneath. He and his soldiers, they stormed the sacred hall, dragged Ngadi out at gunpoint. The villagers were forced indoors, trembling in silence. The elders begged him, okay, if you must take this drum, please keep it away from public eyes. Do not expose it to the world. Maybe that is why he's sitting in the dungeons in the British Museum. Maybe something has happened. Well, I don't know. This is just me speculating. Now, don't display it. No, it must be kept away. People must not see it. But to this day, the question lingers. Why did the white man that took the drum and broke that sacred law, what happened to him? I want to know. Almost all of the 200,000 Pokomo have now converted into Islam and Christianity, including the royal family. So the absence of the Ngadi is a consistent reminder of the ruinous effect of colonialism. The confiscation of the Ngadi also disrupted the succession rights and the rituals of the Pokomo, as the drum can no longer be struck to announce the enthronement of a king and by extension, the beginning of a new era of leadership. The British Museum acknowledged, though, what the Pokomo have always known, that the Ngadi was not given willingly and that the Pokomo are the rightful owners. This feels like a breakthrough, right? Until they will now add to it, but we can't return it. Wait, let me replay this one. We acknowledge that the Pokomo Pokomo people are the rightful owners. It does not belong to us, the Brits. We stole it violently, but we cannot return it. Remember before when I talked about how turning objects that was made before 1850 and does not have a duplicate? Yes, that law is what they are stating. Instead, they offered a loan for something stolen. They even need to scrap this whole loan thing. It's either you're returning it or you're not returning it. Because of the Pokomo, that's not reconciliation. It's just mocking them. Now, in this case, we have two bad guys though. It's both the Kenyan government and the British Museum. We already know the British people's fault. They stole it. They say they are not returning it because they have one paper. The Gango carvings returned by the Denver Museum. They are now stuck at the Kenyan airport. Why? Because of tax dispute. Kenyan customs officials, they said the American museum has to pay duty tax of nearly $60,000. Now, the museum is like, me, I return something, I know they pay. The government said they are now waiving it. Now, please explain this logic to me because I can't understand the Kenyan government's approach. Something that you would have already set up in a museum, build a museum and start enjoying the spiritual, cultural, and economic benefit. Because right now, I hear that they're still sitting at the airport. Won't the same thing happen to the Ngadji drum when it's returned? The Pokomo community has experienced cultural, spiritual, and ritual losses as a result of the confiscation of Ngadi. The Kijo Council, a secret elder society who are divinely ordained to enforce the rules of Ngadi, lost their position as both the spiritual and traditional authority of the Pokomo. The community has also lost the capacity to sound that call to worship, to come together and unite. As a result, many Pokomo community members no longer practice the traditional spiritual practices. Oral accounts from elders in the community have said that the British colonial administration sought to destabilize and eventually destroy the unity of the Pokomo community members that was fostered through that Ngadi drum. So their unity posed as a significant threat to the perpetuation of the British colonial rule. That is even why they took the drum. So the Pokomo eventually decided to do something different. If the British won't return Ngadi, they will rebuild their spirit without permission. So they began to document their oral history, teaching young people about the drum and connecting with other African groups demanding restitution. The fight became a collective. The king leads a campaign calling for full restitution, not temporary loans, not polite acknowledgements. Although the British Museum acknowledges that Ngadi was not given freely to them by the Pokomo community and the community is the rightful owner, they have yet to publicly say that they even intend to return Ngadi. The sacred drum still remains in a storeroom or wherever it is at the British Museum against the Pokomo community's wishes. But on the bright side, Njiho confirmed that the drum is still in good shape. He said it is quite a relief to see that it has not been damaged. Even the hairs of the hides stretched across the drum were still there. Because before his visit, many Pokomo elders assumed that Ngadi was lost and completely destroyed. The Ngadi remains in the British Museum and it's no longer forgotten. Every speech, every story, every cultural revival beats like a distant echo of the drum. The Pokomo are drumming again. Not with the Ngadi though, but with its memory, its identity, and defiance. I am Joadri.